Hi, this is Scott from the Waterwise Community Center. Welcome to part 9 of our Do-It-Yourself Garden Design video series, where we'll be talking about finding inspiration and fun research online. This is one of my favorite parts because it's where we get to look at all of the gorgeous pictures of different gardens and really kind of start to create a vision of what we want our space to look and feel like. We've done a lot of the kind of analysis and problem solving part, and that all is really important. But for me, here's where it gets really exciting. So I want to show you some of my favorite online resources for that. And we are going to start with the Waterwise Garden Planner. This is the website that my agency, the Chino Basin Water Conservation District and Waterwise Community Center, created specifically for people looking to get inspiration and learn about how to care for their landscapes in Southern California. If you are watching these videos from somewhere else, you might find some of these resources useful. Definitely if you're in other parts of California. If these plants are plants that will thrive in your area, the information here will mostly be useful and transferable. But what you're going to want to do is if you are outside of Southern California, you're going to want to use other sources to find out if these plants are going to grow well in your area, and then you can move forward. If you are not in California, a few of these plants might apply, but you're going to be better off taking kind of the same methods that we're talking about in this video series and using other local resources from your region or from your state for the plant part of that. So with that, let's jump into the Waterwise Garden Planner. And there's a few ways you can use this site. The main parts of this website are what we call our plant finder, our garden design section, our helpful lists, and our resources. And so we'll briefly go through each one. If you're just looking for 2 or 3 plants to replace something or doing just a one planter up against the base of your house, you might not need to go that deeply into design. Or conversely, if you're working on a design, you've been going through step by step and you finally get to the point where you're ready to choose plants, the plant finder is going to be very helpful. That's where you can plug in all of the information we've talked about for right plant, right place kind of concepts, as well as other factors, and get a list of some of our top recommended plants. So for example, say you know that you are looking for a shrub and you want it to be California native, and it's going to be low water, and it's a full sun area. So from there, of the many plants we have on this website, of the hundreds, if not thousands of plants you can find in a nursery in California, we're down to our top 53. That's still a lot of plants, but you have a couple of options from here. You can start kind of scrolling through the pictures and also looking at the sizes, which are going to be different, some of the information, or you can go even further. And so for this example, say you maybe want to make sure that it's a great plant for birds and wildlife. And so from there, actually we're only down to 51 because natives are so good for that. But maybe you have clay soil and you also want it to be a great plant for butterflies. And so from there, you're down to our top 11 choices. And now from each of these, you can then click on the plant profile to get more information or the more info button. And you can get a full detailed profile of the plant. You'll see pictures, usually close up, as well as farther away, a description, more detail on those plant properties for really understanding the right size, right place, information about water needs, as well as information about how to care for the plant after it's in, because whether it's you or someone else who's helping you out in the garden with the care for it, you're going to need to know what to do. What to do is not complicated for most of these plants. Most of them only are going to be touched like once a year for maintenance if everything is going well, but it's really important to know for the plants, if you do a little bit of trimming back once a year. Some plants want just a light trim. Some plants want a really hard cutback to reinvigorate their growth. Some plants are best pruned in spring. Some plants are best pruned in fall. And so if you do the right thing, but the wrong time of year, for example, you might have just cut off all of the buds that are soon going to be forming the season's blooms. And so this information is crucial to kind of create your plan for how you're going to care for your different plants. And these are also associated with some different plant lists. And so that's the basics on the plant finder. We have mentioned a number of times in this video series, and we will continue to mention through the design demonstration in the next video, the garden design section. So here's really what that means. So I've spent a number of years working one-on-one with people, helping them kind of envision their gardens for Southern California. And something that I've learned is that for the most part, most people don't want an infinite number of different things. There's kind of different themes that emerge. And so what we did is we took the top 8 different themes that we find that a lot of people are interested in, and we created these garden design templates to help people get inspired and to help them with their design projects. For example, we find that the idea of having a butterfly and songbird garden of water-wise plants happens to be very popular. If you're going to be putting in a low-water garden, you might as well populate it with some colorful, beautiful California native plants that are to create great habitat for butterflies and songbirds. It adds a whole other dimension to your garden. It's not the only way to go, but it's a very popular thing that appeals to a lot of people. And so, for example, one of our 8 templates is a butterfly and songbird garden. And so you can go to explore the design, and from there you can see what we did, which was we created these designs where amongst a theme from all of the plants on the garden planner, we created a smaller kind of pre-coordinated plant palette where in this example there's one ornamental grass, there's a few small trees or shrubs that can be easily pruned up as a small tree, some normal shrubs, many for full sun, but some that are great for part shade as well for different situations in the yard, as well as a few colorful perennials to kind of fill spots or along edges and in between. And so with that, you might not use all of the plants on this list, or you might use it as a base and still pull in another plant here or another plant there that you like. But all of these plants are ones that we know are going to fit the theme and work great together in a single garden. And so with that, with those plant lists, we created these example designs for front yards, and this could definitely be used and translated to a backyard, of extra large, large, medium, and small sizes. And so you can see these different visualizations and with different ways of labeling the plants. There's a view where you can hover and get the pop-up of the plant identification, and if you click on it, you'll go directly to that plant profile. And from close up and far away. And you can use these however you want. So for here, for example, I like a very kind of full look to my gardens. A lot of plants, a lot of color. And so this is very appealing to me. But for some people, especially first-time gardeners, maybe this looks a little too dense. So if you want to, you can still take the idea of the template, use it as a starting theme, but if you wanted a more open space or a wider path to walk through, you can kind of manipulate it however you want and go from there. And so on all of these, as you go, if you see an image that you like, there's also a bird's eye view plan, which is the exact match to that image. And so you can see everything that's going on with the plants from a different perspective. And you can also really see how they're shaped, and even in some of these, how there actually is a little bit more space to be able to get in between the plants and do maintenance and that sort of thing. And these can literally be printed out. I'll show you how in just a moment. And if you print them out on an 11 by 17 piece of paper at the copy shop or something like that, then you can use this little scale or use a ruler, and 1/8 of an inch on that 11 by 17 inch paper print would be the equivalent of about 1 foot in the real world. And so you can take inspiration from this, and then when we show you in the next video how if you want to, you can go as far as actually drawing out your plan in graph paper, you can really get into how to kind of copy some of these plant combinations for yourself if you would like to. And so on the ones where there's a lot of depth to it, and trees as well, you can kind of progress through the series of images and you see the trees start to peel back. And so you can get a greater sense of the depth of the garden and how the different spaces come together. And this proceeds through this whole series of different sizes where some of the lots are very deep, some of the lots are more wide, for kind of the different types of housing situations that we often see for front yards in our local area. And so say, for example, you have a small yard and maybe you don't even have room for a tree in a small yard. How do you do this in a small space and still have a lovely garden that works for this theme. Smaller gardens are great, and in fact, as a DIY project, they're much less intimidating to start with for first-time DIYers. And then there's a section that's a bit of a lookbook with some pictures of some of the plants and kind of different effects that you might get by using the theme of this garden. You also get a description, different other information, as well as a baseline irrigation schedule to work with for the garden, as well as links to kind of start to understand what does that mean for the irrigation schedule, how do you figure out how long and how often to actually operate your irrigation system. And then if you want to, you can download a PDF package that is kind of meant to print. You can print it at any size that you want, but it is scaled to print out very nicely at that 11 by 17 paper size. And you get all of that content that we had on that list, as well as some additional material at the end, where there's a section called detail pages, where you can get supplemental information like a bloom color calendar for the plants in the template. So a lot of people like the idea, both aesthetically, of having flowers as close to year-round as possible, and you can absolutely do that with the plants that we have. Spring is always going to be a huge bloom time, but there's many plants that will flower throughout other parts of the year as well, and especially if you're trying to have a yard that appeals to butterflies and pollinators, and even birds, because many plants after the blooms fade, seed is available for many of the small songbirds, then you can use this to plan to have at least a few plants in bloom in your garden in every season of the year. And then for other things that people commonly might want to include in their gardens, like water capture features, like a dry stream bed, we have this kind of magazine style explanation of these different features and how you might plan for, and some basic tips on building them at home. So from dry stream beds to something called French drains, which is another water capture feature. We talk about mulch and the types of mulch you might consider using and the benefits and disadvantages of each one, so you can figure out what's right to you, information about pathways and more. So I encourage you to download any of the files, and you can really dig deeply into that and then print any of the pages and have them nearby when you're working on your garden design for easy access to the information. And so that is the garden design section of the WaterWise Garden Planner. We also have supplementally some helpful lists for different things, like some of our very favorite plants overall, plants that are great for hedges and screens, or even down to some detailed things like the plants that'll work great along and then even down in the dry stream bed where it seasonally floods. We are consistently working on these lists, making tweaks, additions, and changes, so you can check back often. And then finally, we have our resources section, which is kind of a catch-all for other stuff that might be useful to you. We have recorded workshops about all of the basics that you will want to know to be successful with your garden project, from our Start Here First, kind of landscape transformation basics online workshop recording, to a detailed dive in California native design. And that does overlap quite a bit with this video series. So if you're doing this whole video series kind of step by step, there will be some additional information in here, but there will be some overlap. But then going forward, installation and establishment of native and WaterWise gardens. So as you go from design to actually doing it, we have installation and establishment, we have pruning and maintenance. And then if you want to, you can go see our full online workshop recording YouTube playlist, where we have much more, including gardening for birds, butterflies, pollinators, where we get really more into those principles of how to make your yard kind of a nature sanctuary at home, rainwater harvesting for home landscapes. So really going into how to understand your site, where to capture water, how to put it into dry stream beds or other features like infiltration basins. If you're starting with the lawn, even if your lawn is pretty brown, you're going to want to make sure you remove it very thoroughly, because at the beginning is the best time to do that to make sure the grass is not going to grow back. So check out our Removing Your Lawn the Right Way workshop. And then more, especially going into irrigation systems and how to set them up for WaterWise and native gardens. So I encourage you to check out our online workshop playlist, and our workshop recordings. We also do lots and lots of free live workshops, some online, most of them in person in our demonstration garden and at our headquarters facility at the Waterwise Community Center in Montclair, just the western edge of San Bernardino County, almost at the county line with Los Angeles County. And so from here, you can also see our upcoming schedule and register for all of our free workshops, which are a great place to not only get content, but to get to see some things hands-on in the garden, to get your hands on irrigation materials, understand at a more tactile level how to really do all of this, and also get your questions answered. So everything is free and open to everybody, and you can use that link to see what we have coming up and sign up. We also have links to information about proper planting, as well as this kind of same information in a web format on those detailed pages that I showed you on the downloadable PDF packets. Next question that we often get from people is, where do I buy these plants and the stuff I need for my landscape? So for the San Bernardino County, Inland Empire, and Eastern Los Angeles area, here are our top sources for native and waterwise plants, along with the types of plants that each of these nurseries sell, because some of these specialize and focus on different types of plant material. If you know of other nurseries that you think should be on this list, please let us know and we'll add them. And then the places where you can get soil, mulches, rock, decomposed granite, irrigation tools, landscape supplies, those are a little bit more evenly distributed throughout Southern California. So we really focused on just providing a list of places that are Western San Bernardino County primarily, because if we tried to include a list of the whole region, the list itself would be endless, but these places are pretty easy to find just searching online. The final thing I want to mention about the Waterwise Garden Planner is you can create a login, and that allows you to have a section that's saved for you called My Plants, where you can create different plant lists. Here, this is just a demonstration account, and so I only created one plant list called Front Yard Ideas. Haven't put any plants in it yet, but let's go ahead and do that. And you can go to add plants, but you can also just start anywhere on the website. And for example, if you want to add a plant, you can click on the heart button, or some places it says add plant, and then you will see the different lists. And so we can add it to the Front Yard Ideas list and save it. And then when we go back, we will see that reflected in the list. And so you can create kind of Front Yard Ideas 1, Front Yard Ideas 2, ideas for the backyard, ideas for your grandma's house, and keep all of that saved and organized. And so that is the tour for the Waterwise Garden Planner. We are always working on new projects for the website, so check back often, and we hope it's useful to you. So now I'd like to show you some of my other very favorite sources of information and inspiration for California native gardens, provided by other organizations and available on the internet. There's a lot of great information out there, and so these are just a few of my top recommendations. The first one we're going to look at is the Tree of Life Nursery website, which is californianativeplants.com. Tree of Life Nursery is a commercial nursery that does both retail and wholesale sales, and they're located in San Juan Capistrano in Orange County. And they have a lot going on, but one of my very favorite resources of theirs that is so useful, whether you are a beginning native gardener or have been gardening for a while, and is also very inspirational, are some of their monthly blogs. And so from their homepage, if you go to education and beginner blogs, you will be able to see their In the Natural Garden article or newsletter series that is written by Mike Evans, who's one of the founders of Tree of Life Nursery. So these articles will be reflecting on the recent weather, for example, in this case, just finishing up multiple days with over 105-degree weather. They'll be talking about what you should be doing right now in your garden, as well as what you can be doing to be preparing for what's going to come next based on the seasonal tasks we'll have in our garden. Most of the tasks to happen in a California native garden are not complex, but it's very useful to know exactly what and when to be doing, whether it's watering, pruning, any specific things you should be thinking about related to potential weeds or pests that show up. And again, most native gardens have very little that you're going to have to do in terms of, for example, pest control. But really having this resource to know exactly what to anticipate and keep you up to speed with what you should be considering is great. It's also beautifully written and just a little burst of inspiration, usually once a month. So there's lots of other stuff on the Tree of Life Nursery webpage. If you're anywhere near Orange County, they also do great workshops at the nursery and have lots of other cool stuff to check out. For those of you who really want to go deeply into California native plants, we think that the Waterwise Garden Planner is a great place to start, and we have over 100 profiles of what we think are most of the top choices for the beginning gardener, certainly, to work with native plants in Southern California gardens. But we don't cover all of the sometimes very cool, rare and hard to find, or maybe a little more difficult to grow plants that can be great garden plants for those who really, really want to go deeply into working with natives. Some of the stuff that you'll find only occasionally at local specialty nurseries. But Calscape, which is a project of the California Native Plant Society, has all of those detailed profiles. You can see here profiles of almost 8,000 native plants, and some cool search features that are a little bit different than the Waterwise Garden Planner. If you happen to be interested in knowing what plants would historically have been local to exactly where your site is, those aren't the only plants to consider growing in your garden, but sometimes those are nice choices, and that's really cool information to know. You can start by just putting in your zip code. So I'm going to put in 91763, which is the zip code of where we are at the Waterwise Community Center. And that's going to pull up what was thought to be most of the plants historic to that area. So that's 662 plants. Some of those are going to be rare or oddball kind of plants that you're never going to find in a local nursery pretty much. But something that I encourage you to do is at least check out from there. You can, in the lower right corner, go to the very easy to grow in a garden plants from that list. And that, in this case, gets you down to 83. And a lot of these do make very great garden specimens. A lot of them are commonly available, and then you can get the profiles of each one. So, for example, here's a willow that historically would have grown in local waterways. Not a low water plant, generally not a common one because of that to grow in a front yard or backyard situation, but there's lots of other great stuff in here that maybe you would want, like California buckwheat, which is one of the go-to most common California native plants from our area, and a great one to use in the garden as sort of a really almost bulletproof kind of backbone of that. And so from here, you can check out individual plant profiles, and you get these cool maps that show what was thought in yellow to be the historic range of the plant, as well as really interesting and detailed information about the wildlife supported, especially if you're interested in butterflies, the caterpillar larval host plants of the butterfly species that each of these plants support, and then another way of looking at some of the kind of how to put the right plant in the right place information. Some of it overlaps with the Waterwise Garden Planner, but another absolutely great resource. Another thing you can do is use some of those advanced search features, especially if you're looking for plants that are going to fill like a really strange niche. And so you can have your local zip code, or you can just open it up to any California native plant recommendations. So that's Calscape, a project of the California Native Plant Society. And another amazing resource in Southern California is the Theodore Payne Foundation. Theodore Payne Foundation is a nonprofit based in Sun Valley in the San Fernando Valley area, and they are dedicated to the promotion of California native plants, and they do that both through projects that support the wildlands, as well as lots and lots of engagement in urban horticulture within the general Los Angeles area. And they have an incredible nursery there that's open year-round. They do lots of education and workshops, have great demonstration plantings. So if you can make the drive out there to Sun Valley, I encourage you to check them out. And they have cool information and resources on their website. But the thing I want to show you right now is their separate website for the Native Plant Garden Tour. Theodore Payne Foundation organizes what is the largest native plant garden tour, which happens every year in the spring in the general Los Angeles area, going out into the San Gabriel Valley and Orange County as well. And so it's a chance to see real world, both public scale, but mostly residential gardens. And they really cover the range from very high-end, professionally designed and installed gardens to do-it-yourself projects, sometimes which are the first garden that the homeowner has ever put in. So it's a great way to get engaged. If you go out on the tour, you can normally talk to the homeowners. Sometimes you can talk to the contractors involved in the project. I can't recommend it enough. I go every year. But as a resource on the website, a very cool thing that they have is they have archives from all the years of past tours, where you can open up the individual website from the past year. Sometimes they have different themes. Sometimes you have to click around, and you can find great photography of all of the gardens that were featured on the tour that year. And so you can just click through them and load the photos and find lots and lots of inspiration of gardens of all sorts of different styles, and lots of inspiration as well, not just for the plants featured, but for different approaches to hardscape and patio spaces and pathways, and providing you with ideas for lots of options, whether you're going to be doing the work yourself or you're going to be showing the pictures to a contractor to help you with the installation. And so that is the Native Plant Garden Tour website, which you can access by going to nativeplantgardentour.org. It's also, as things get closer to the spring, where you can find out about the upcoming garden tour event and get tickets. So if you're looking for additional information and inspiration for your project, I'd encourage you to check out these additional resources and really kind of choose your own adventure as you're pulling together all of your influences, as you're looking at gardens with elements that you're interested in copying. So when you have your goals in mind, as we go back to this process we're working through, if you reflect on your goals, once you start using all of these resources, it really starts to help you pull things together. You don't need to create a brilliant work of art from scratch. It can be a very logical process of setting your goals, doing some research online using these resources, finding the stuff that inspires you, and then it can be a process of thinking about which elements you have room to put together on your base plan drawing. You might need to come up with a list of priorities of some of those goals as you apply these things that you see onto your plan. And that's where putting it down on graph paper really starts to help, because you can really start to see, I want a patio that looks kind of like this, and here's going to be my pathway, and you start to understand what material you want it to be out of. And then you're adding in a solid backbone of the trees and the woody shrubs that you've seen that you really like, and then mixing in some perennial plants or some wildflowers, and you start to put this all together. And sometimes, although it does take time, by the time you get there, the plan's almost starting to build itself in a way. And so with all of this information and all of these resources, hopefully you'll feel empowered to be able to hop online and really start digging in and figuring out what's going to work to help you meet your goals. And I'll see you in the next video, where we take all of this stuff and I'm going to walk you through a very lengthy, one step at a time demonstration of an example of how to pull this all together into a detailed garden design. And that next video is quite long, so if you want to just click through it, get the basic idea, and you feel good to go, that's great. Or if you want to sit there and watch along with the whole thing, really see how it's done step by step by step, I will be there with you the whole way, just to give you one example of really taking the time to pull it all together in a considered, thoughtful, but not necessarily very complex manner. So I hope you'll join us for the next video.